Thank you for joining us for our first Power Hour of 2025. Today, we are going to be talking about the Customer Message Center hosted by Kat. Thanks for having patience with us as we've kind of switched over how we're doing things from Teams to Zoom. At the bottom of the Zoom window, you will see a menu with different options. The options include a chat and a Q&A feature. If you have questions during the presentation, please type your questions into the Q&A feature and we will review them during the session. Also, please note that we are recording the session, so if there's anything you missed, don't worry, we'll send you out a link as soon as we can, probably this afternoon. So thank you for joining us, and we'll go ahead and turn it right over to Kat.
Awesome, thank you so much. Hi, everybody, welcome back again to another Power Hour. Today, as Megan has mentioned, we are going to go over Route Manager's Customer Message Center product. For today, what we will be covering is going to be the purchasing of CMC points within the system. We will cover via codes of setting them up and assigning them to customer accounts, setting up templates, how to use the short codes on your templates, the generate messages window, how to set up the automated workflows, and the different reports that you can look at for your CMC messages. And if anybody has any kind of questions, concerns, feel free to put them in the chats or the Q&A area during this Power Hour. And we'll try to answer them as we go along. And if not, we'll have some time at the end of the Power Hour as well for any open questions to follow up on. Okay, for our first portion of the topic today, we are going to go over purchasing CMC points. I'm going to explain what the points are used for, where to purchase these points within RMA, and then the reoccurring billing options for points. So I'm going to quickly switch over to our RMA system. Now, within RMA, everyone has access to the Customer Message Center. In order to get to it, you would go under Modules, Customer Message Center, and all the way at the bottom, you will see a Manage My CMC Points. When you open this window, you'll see a couple plans available to you. The first one is regarding a phone number. So this will tell you how many points per month it will charge your system to use this phone number. There is a special setup in order to set that phone number for any kind of text messages or phone calls going out to your customers. That will not be fully covered today. So if you do have questions, concerns for that, please reach out to our support department. However, you do have the ability to purchase an available phone number within the RMA system. It will be available whenever you are sending out phone calls or text messages to your customers. It'll show that phone number to them. That way the customers can use that and put them down as a contact instead of marking it for spam from our 1-800 number. If you do not use or purchase a phone number, it'll just come from our default, I believe it's a 1-800 number that you would just want to make sure you notify your customers that that's coming from your company. The next portion of this goes over the Basic, Plus, Pro, Enterprise, and Platinum packages. As you can see, when you click on each one of these package plans, it'll tell you how many points you are receiving, the cost of those points, and then a breakdown of how these points are used. And we do separate it by the United States and Canada point system. And then there's also an Australian point system. So if you have any questions, concerns on how your system is going to be charged for points, please review this information here. Points are only charged for voice calls that go out through RMA, text messages that are sent out through RMA, and for text message that also includes if a customer responds back to your text message, and then faxes that you send out of RMA. So here we can see that faxes will use 3 points, automated calls, 3 points, text messages, 2 points for every 160 characters. We highly recommend if you are setting up a template for text messages to keep it short, sweet, and simple because spaces in your message also count as a character. And if you go over this character limit, even if it's just one character, it'll charge an additional 2 points for every one of those messages that goes out. So let's say my message was 161 characters. Every person I contact and send a text to is going to charge me 4 points per customer. Now, when you guys are reviewing this, what you want to take into consideration is how many customers you may be contacting daily, the different types of messages that you'll be using, and then you'll see what the points will accumulate to per day. And I highly recommend just multiplying that amount for the whole month of when you plan to send out messages, so you can see what package plan would work best for you. Because as we go down the line, the points increase. So you would just kind of want to do a little bit of math to figure out what's going to be best for your company. Now, once you choose the package plans, let's say we're going to go with the basic. You would hit forward on here. It will ask for your card information. And what you can do is if you just want to do a one-time charge, you can submit the card information, hit next, and it'll just take you to the shopping cart where you finalize the transaction. However, if you want reoccurring billing to take place, you would hit this option for auto bill. It's going to ask you for a point threshold. What this does is if your points, let's say you had 1,000 to start with, you know, every day you're spending at least 400 points a day, I would probably put my threshold at 500 points. That way, once I hit the 500 points, it'll recharge for that original package plan I purchased. And I know that my automated workflows going out won't run out of points, because if you do run out of points, the workflow will generate as if it's sending out the emails or the text messages or phone calls. But if you were to check the reporting on it, it'll actually say that it errored and failed because you had no credits or no points in the system. So auto billing can always be set up for that with a threshold. Again, it's not required. Just know if you are just doing a one-time purchase, if you run out, you'll have to come back in here manually to purchase. If you guys have any issues with this window on purchasing, feel free to contact our accounting department. They can also assist with the purchasing. All right. And again, just a recap, points are used for any faxes, text messages, or phone calls that come out through RMA. Okay, so the next thing we're going to cover today is our VIA codes. So I'll explain what the VIA codes are. Sorry, this should be VIA codes. Where do you create them in the system, and where do you assign them to the customer accounts? So first things first, VIA codes are the codes you will set to your customers in order for them to receive the automatic notifications. This is usually used if you want to send out delivery notifications to customers, let's say a day or two before their delivery, just to remind them to put out their bottles or, prepare for your delivery, or let us know if there's any changes that need to take place with your delivery. If a VIA code is not assigned to an account, they will not receive those messages. So first thing you need to do is go to List Customer Setup Codes, Contact VIA Codes. In here, you'll have a general window of what type of codes to set up. Anything with an asterisk will go through our customer message center. So you have email, fax, SMS, and automated voice call. The other items without the asterisk, this could just be your own personal note for your company. If they don't like automated voice calls, maybe they want a personal call, so they request a telephone. You can assign that as well. It just won't generate through the generate messages window. What I'm going to do is show you guys our email code. And the VIA code itself can be one character. So it could be a number or it could be a letter. And then you'll have a description of what that's representing. And you'll just make sure that you choose the proper type that'll apply to that VIA code. Now, emails in the system are all free. You guys are not limited. You can send as many as you want through RMA. But again, the fax, the SMS, and the automated voice calls, those do charge points. Now, once you set up your VIA codes, the next thing you need to do is apply them to a customer account. So you'll go to List Customer Information. And there are 3 areas on the customer's account that you can apply a via code to. And once we get into the generate messages window, I'll show you where they apply. But the info tab is one of them. You will see 2 contact via codes here. Now you can set up 2 different codes if you prefer. And they don't have to be the same on the other 2 tabs I will be showing you. They can be different for each tab. Just know that again, those apply to different areas in the generate messages window. But for whatever via code you do assign, you do need to make sure that they have a following data filled in. So if it's an email, they should have an email filled in. If it's going to be a text message, they should have it under the cell phone field. And then if it's just a phone call, it'll be under the contact phone field. Now, besides the info tab, you can also go to credit CMC settings. This one is usually used for marketing emails, but you can assign 2 different via codes here. Again, they do not have to be the same as the ones on the info tab. They can be different, but you would also need to make sure that that data is filled in for the matching criteria. And then lastly, the one that's used probably the most in the system is our route tab. So on our route tab, you will have 2 via codes down here, and it's going to be our top and our bottom. You would assign whichever ones that you want to apply to the customer, and this is normally used for the delivery notifications I mentioned. So if you are going to contact customers a day before their delivery or a day after, feel free to set them up here, and then it's going to pull from their route information. So you will need to make sure that they have a cell phone for any text messages. Phone calls should be under contact. And then if they are going to do an email, they should have an email address. Right. And then for the customer via codes, that is the main concern about setting them up. Again, it just depends on what type of messaging, automated messaging you may be creating as far as where you want to set up those via codes. So if you have any questions, concerns, feel free to let us know. But before I get out of this window, the last item I want to review that occurs frequently is under the Route Info tab. There is a pre-calling tab. On this tab, if this don't call pre-sale option is selected, that means they will not receive any automated notifications from the system. So I always suggest to customers, double check your customer type codes because sometimes there'll be an option for this pre-selected. I want to say in the later versions of V8, we might have removed that, but just definitely double check on your system what you see. And then if you do see a customer is set to don't call or pre-sale, you can also unselect this, and then they should pull up in your workflow notifications. And then one other thing too, actually going back to the credit tab under CMC settings, there's also a don't send emails, don't send SMS. If the customer unsubscribes, let's say to a text message or an email, it will automatically check this box. If they didn't mean to do it, you should be able to come in here, deselect it, and update their account so they can receive notifications from you. However, customers do have the ability to reply unsubscribe to the emails and text messages, and it'll auto trigger these items. Right, in just one moment, guys, we're going to just check the chat real quick, so do bear with us.
Yeah. It looks like we do have one question, but it is for Prism software, so let's go ahead and just keep going.
Okay, so just real quick, again, this is going mainly over the Route Manager software. Any Prism attendees, I'm glad you guys are here. But if you do have questions regarding your personal software, feel free to shoot us a message. You can send it to support as well, and we can touch base with you on that. I'll also go through the chat as well, just to see who left comments, and I'll try and follow up with you on the questions you have as well. Okay, so we're going to get into our next slide. Right, so we are going to go over setting up the templates. So I'm going to explain what our templates are used for, where to create these templates in RMA, and what are the different template types. And just addition to this, I'm also going to go over how to use these short codes in the system. So I'll explain what the short codes are used for, where would you go to pull them, and where does that information pull from? Okay, so first thing, what are our templates used for? The templates are used for you guys to set up your message that will go out to the customer. And this is for your text messages. This is going to be for your voice calls. It can also be used mainly for the emails as well, but there's fax and some other options too. So in order to access that, you'll go under Modules, Customer Message Center. We are going to come down to Manage My CMC Templates. When you first open up this window, the default option will always default to email. You can see here that the template type is email. If you are going to set up a text message, let's say notification, you can't do that under the email. You would have to create a whole new template under the SMS option. So for each type of message you're sending out, you've got to make sure you create the template under that template type. And if you don't, then again, just reach out to support for assistance if you need it, but you won't have access to choose that template if it's not under the proper template type. In just one moment. Okay, so we did get a question. Do customers who accidentally respond stop to a text have to text to restart again? I'm sorry. We have run into issues with customers not receiving text after we uncheck the boxes. So I know there was an issue with the older versions of RMA where you would deselect the option and it wouldn't restart those text messages for the customer. If you are running into that, please let us know. We may need to get you on the newer version and just review the situation as is. But those check boxes, once deselected, it should allow for the customer to receive them again. So there's not like a pop-up or a notification the customers would get. Likewise, the customers can't really reply back start, as far as I'm aware, to restart those messages. In this event, you would just need to contact our support team so we can make sure that deselecting those checkboxes is properly restarting that functionality for your customer. And Courtney, if you have specific ones, I mean, please let me know. I can reach out to you afterwards and we can look into that further. Another one is the best way to put pictures in the email body. So I will actually show you guys in here. I'm going to go over the formatting of your emails. So as you can see, when we're in the email window, you do have a lot of formatting options. As you hover over these options, they will tell you what each image does. You can change your background color, text color. You can center them. You also have these options over here to add in links. So nice thing, if I wanted to add, an Advantagers link, I can highlight this, click on the link button, and I can paste my URL here and then hit OK. Once that's done, this will be highlighted or hyperlinked. And then the customer, once they receive the email, can actually click on that and it'll automatically take them to their that website. Another fun tool, as you had mentioned, with the images. So images in our email templates have to be web hosted. If you don't know how to web host, we have a tool in the latest 8.2 version under Customer Message Center Setup, under Images, to where you can click here, add an image from your desktop. I don't have any for this portion, but you would just choose an image, it would load the file, you would save it, and it would generate it as a web hosted image. And then you can come back into your email template and use that image by clicking on the smiley face. It'll give you a pre-warning, just stating make sure it's web hosted. And then you can choose that image that you saved after converting it. Or if you already have a web hosted image that you saved, you can choose that as well. And then it would display in this window for you. Now, images, as they're displayed in the window, if they aren't web hosted properly, they will normally populate as a little box with an X in it, so you can know right away, hey, this isn't, web hosted. You'll have to convert it or find another image. But if it normally displays, I always suggest that you still send a test message to yourself, just so you can see the size of that image in there to make sure it's looking, proper for what they're seeing on their screen, and that it also came through properly. Now, a fun thing you can do with links is if there is also an image in here, you can actually highlight that image and add a link to it. So let's say it's your logo for your company. You can actually highlight your logo, input your company's website, and then the customers can click on your logo and it'll take them over to that website. Other than that, I'm going to set this up as just a standard delivery reminder message to show you guys the next portion, which is the short codes. So first you'll start off your message, and then our short codes are right here under this dropdown. The nice thing with our short codes is that they'll give you a description on the far right as far as what information this code is actually pulling. Now, if you are on older versions of RMA like V7 or earlier versions of 8.0, you may not have the descriptions here. It may just be the code. But on 8.1 and 8.2 versions, you will see the description. Now, some of these codes may pull directly from specific modules. So like your contracts or easy pay items, those would have to be set up with an additional module, just so you're aware. But other information, like if I just wanted to pull a customer's name, I can select it here. You would want to hit this check mark, and that'll auto apply that code into your message. And you got to think of this as, again, it's automated. So what happens is when the messages will go out to your customers, this is going to look at that account and it's going to look at this code to see what information it's pulling. So for the customer's name, when I send this out to my customers, it's going to be looking at their info tab and it's going to pull the name here and it'll automatically display that. So instead of it saying hi or hello custom name, it'll say hello ANA club. And the next you'll continue with the message. And then there's other codes in here like the next delivery day. So you can give them a long date, it could be a short date, but you can just notate whatever next delivery day it's going to be. And then again, that's going to auto-populate based on that customer's route tab, whatever their next delivery date is. So if I were to go in here, my next delivery shows for 1/29/2025. This is the date that'll auto-populate with that short code. Now, again, I highly recommend when you guys are setting up short codes and templates, always test them first, because we want to see how they do display to you and make sure it's pulling out the proper information from the account. And the easiest way to test that is once you have your message, we then need to save it. You will give your template a name, and just be aware you cannot have spaces in the name. It will throw an error. I normally recommend doing an underscore line just to separate them out. And then once you save, it'll populate over here under my templates. And you can come in here under your templates, select it, and you can change whatever you'd like. Just once you do make a change, make sure you hit save. It's going to ask if you want to overwrite the current template. As long as that's accurate, you'll hit yes. And then it'll take you back to it. Now, if you have multiple templates, as you're going between them, it'll also prompt you before you go into the new template if you want to basically save your changes on the previous template. If there's nothing you change, just hit no. It'll take you to that new template. If there are multiple changes you made, just make sure you save it again before you move on. Another thing I want to mention is down here under ARS libraries, we do give you some basic templates that you can use on our end. Here is that message. It'll say, do you want to revert changes to the current file? That's just saying, hey, I'm moving from this template over to this one. It looks like you might have made changes. Do you want to save them? I'm just going to say no, because there's nothing I changed. Oh, sorry. Revert changes to current file. Sorry. Yes, so you can switch over. And then here, you'll actually see that sample message that we have set up for you. This is one that we use for Easy Pay customers. And you can actually save this template. You'll find it up in my templates at the top, and you'll need to make modifications. You can't choose any of these templates down here on your guys's workflows. They will have to be made up top to where you have access to them. And then you would just remove any information you don't want. And again, you can save it. So this is the main setup process with your templates. Now, email is going to give you more options to choose from because there's a lot of different things you can do with emails. However, text messages are a bit more restrictive. You won't have all the tools and functionalities in here. It'll mainly just be the text and then the short codes that you can use. And I'm just going to save an example real quick. And once you notice is that when you actually access that template after creating it, all my options are removed. And that's because the only thing you could really modify with your text messages is going to be the short codes that you want to add. Now, pre-warning, if you guys are going to use short code, please consider the amount of information that comes with those short codes. Because again, text messages charges you charges you 2 points for every 160 characters. So if that short code is like somebody's address, it could be, more points per customer if they have a really long address. So just always be aware of what kind of short code you have, how long that description could possibly be, and again, how long your current message already is, because your spaces, like I have here, that will count as one character. And at the end of your message as well, just make sure you don't put no spaces, because even though you don't see them, they will count as characters too. Likewise, voice messages is the same. You'll have short codes that you can implement, but you'll want to make sure that you make the message just pretty quick, short. I want to say it's 60 seconds. Let's double check. Yeah, so 60 seconds. So it'll charge 3 points per minute if you're in the United States or Canada. If you're Australian, 3 to 9 points per minute, just depending on the message. So again, when you guys are setting up these items that do cost points, just be very careful with them, test with them, which I will actually show you next. So we're going to go back to our email. When you guys do set up a template, if you do want to test it out, you can go into your test account if you'd like, or even a customer's account, that's fine. On any of these tabs, route, credit, or info, you can choose one of these icons. So just depending on what you're wanting to test, for instance, let's do an email. I would just click on the email button. It will auto-populate the customer's email on file, but I can always change it if I prefer. The from address is always going to pull from the user's account you're logged in as. So I'm logged in as admin and RMA. On my employee account, it'll have an employee email address filled in, and that is what it's auto pulling. If you do not have an employee email address filled in, it will prompt a window for you to put a reply address, and it will prompt that for every message you sent out. So I highly recommend anybody that's doing batch messages, always make sure that their employee account has an email assigned, or else it's going to prompt you for every single email that's going to go out for you to put a reply address. The next thing is the subject. So you can use the default subject, which is just a notification, or again, you can remove it and you can type in what you'd like. Now in the message body is where we want to test our templates. So down below, you will see all the templates you created as an email type. You can double click on these templates. It's going to paste it in an HTML code. You can attach files from your system if you want to. Again, this is when you're manually sending a message out to a customer or yourself. And then you also have an option for signatures. You can create signature templates as well. You'll just apply it down here if there's a certain signature you want included. But once you populate the template for the email body, you would hit send. It's going to say message sent to queue. And then later I'll show you guys how to actually view that. But you can use that process for the text messages as well. Just click on the text message, same situation. It's going to go out to that text assigned, or you can change the number. It uses your reply email as if it's a from address, but it's going to show that text message actually coming from our 1-800 number. Unless you purchased a phone number, then it would show from that purchased phone number. But you can also use a template here. You can see my short code already auto-populated. I believe that was a last invoice or something. But it already auto-populated the information, so you can kind of see what it's going to display. And then you can send it out as a text. Now, if I do this, again, that costs points. So even when you're testing, it's still going to cost points. And as a reminder, if any customers do respond back to you guys with on the text message, they'll reply back with a text. That also costs points to your system. It does not come back to a phone as if it was a text message. What'll happen is whoever sent out that delivery notification, let's say there's a reply to email address. Same thing in this situation, it'll show our reply to email address, because if a customer responds to this text message I send, it's actually going to come back as an email, and it'll send to the assigned resource. So if this customer were to reply to me right now, I would go under my email address and I would actually see that text message as an email. Okay, other than that, I do want to move to our next slide, but that is everything as far as setting up your templates. Make sure your templates are set up first before you go into setting up your workflows or automatic notifications. One last thing before I go with the emails is that if you guys have, let's say, a flyer that is coded in HTML and you want to send that out as an email body to your customers, you can also deselect this edit in text mode option, and you can paste your HTML code in here and it will display that flyer image. So this is another way that you guys can do those. But if anyone has questions or want more training, feel free to reach out to our support team. We can assist you. So into our next slide, we are going to go over generate messages. We will do an overview of the generate messages window, a review of each tab in the window, how to set and save criteria, and then how to edit and edit the saved criteria. Now, also to tie with that, we're going to go over automated workflows. So these are those automated processes where you would send out delivery notifications or, past due reminders. There's multiple different things you can set up, but we'll explain, what are automated workflows, how do you create one, the time increments that are suggested between the workflows, and then how to modify an existing workflow. All right, so as I jump over to get to our generate messages window, you'll go to modules, customer message center, generate messages. In this window, you will see 4 tabs. These 4 tabs are what sync up to the customer's information page and their data. So the delivery tab is going to pull their emails, phone numbers off of the route tab in their account. The accounting tab will pull the email, phone numbers from their info tab in RMA. And then the marketing tab will pull the information from that credit tab under CMC settings. Lastly, we have equipment that should pull from the, I believe it's a product equipment window. So anything related to equipment on the account, you will be able to pull information here. Now, again, in older versions of RMA, though, you guys may not see this equipment tab. That is something that was fairly new to V8. But if you're, wanting to use this, feel free to send a request to support and we can get you updated. All right, so firstly on the delivery tab, it is very important when you guys are creating criteria for your workflows that you are on the proper tab. Because let's say, for instance, I want to set up a marketing email, but I'm on the delivery tab and I'm filling out my criteria here. That will not apply to the marketing email workflows. So you won't be able to access it. It's not going to pull the proper information. So just make sure you're on the proper tab when you're setting up a notification for what you're wanting. So I'm going to use the delivery tab as an example. But when you first open this window, it just pulls defaulted criteria, so it's blank. we are going to fill in the criteria for the customers we want to notify. So I'm going to pretend as if I'm going to notify all my customers in the system. I want to exclude, let's say, the residential accounts. In that case, I need to make sure my 2 is ending at government. And my 1 just starts at the top of the list. Now, if you guys, let's say, okay, this notification is going to go to my customers that are from 01 to 04. We're skipping 05, but C to R should also receive it. You will have to create 2 different workflows. So anytime there's a gap in the criteria you're going to use, you will need to create another workflow. For major account codes, I'm going to leave it open. So I'm going to get everyone customer start date. You can choose a specific start date if you'd like. If not, this window will always auto-populate to the current date. So even if you save the criteria as 129, if I were to run this next week and there was a customer that started on February 1st, they would still pull into this notification. Next, we have our credit class. I'm also going to restrict this. I just want 0 through 6. So that means anybody that is on a credit class A through L, they are not going to receive my notification. Next, we give you a couple different options. You can choose only past due customers if they're past due on the account. If not, it's going to pull all customers. If they are hold service, you also have the option to exclude hold service or only notify hold service. If you don't select either of these, hold service customers with a delivery scheduled will still get a notification. One of the bigger ones we run into is if that customer is a will call customer and they don't receive notifications, it's more than likely due to your workflow criteria not including will call customers. So if you want to include will call customers that have a scheduled delivery, please make sure this is checked. I am going to use it for this option. And then once you select that, you do also have the option to make this only notifications for will call customers. You have an option to exclude any suspended accounts. Next, there's going to be a date. Now, in this date, if this is going to be your criteria for an automated process, you don't have to worry about it. You can leave it alone. However, let's say you set up an automated workflow. For some reason, the server, shut down. It didn't get to send them out. So now you have to send it out manually. What you would do is load your criteria, which I'll show you next. And then you would use this date tool. So what you would do here is you would choose the date for the customers that should have received a notification. So in this instance, if they had a delivery, let's say tomorrow, I would put this to tomorrow's date. I would make sure I have a reply to email address. And then you can hit the blue check mark, and this is going to manually send out those messages in this instant. So again, I only recommend this if it's for delivery notifications and for some reason they didn't go out, you can come and manually send them. Or if it's like a marketing email blast, you would manually send them. But otherwise, you don't have to worry about the date if we're going to set this up in what we call an automated workflow, which I'll be showing you next. All right, next we also have a route range, so you can choose which routes you want to include. I'm just going to include everyone. And then lastly, via codes. Okay, not lastly, but the next thing, via codes, is very important. So it'll give you the full via code range. And if you want to send in this one workflow, text messages, phone calls, and emails, you can. That is perfectly fine. Just take into consideration how many messages that will send at that time, because that can take a while for the system to process depending on how many customers you have. If you don't want one workflow for all of your message types, then you would set up a separate workflow for each different type of message you want to send out. Right now, just to show you guys, I'm going to leave it open. We're going to pretend like we're sending every type. You can choose your branch range. I'm going to leave this open as well. And then next, we are going to go into the templates. So when we created our templates earlier, here's where you're going to actually apply them. So under your email template, you would click on the 3 dots. It's going to show you the different options you have. Double click on one of them. It'll apply that template. You can actually use these items over here to display that template message if you want to review it. I don't want to click it now because sometimes this can take a little bit for it to load. So just, be cautious of that. But you can click on these images to display, example of the template and then just information on it. I also know I have a text message, so I'm going to do text. And in this case or scenario, it's perfectly fine if I do, ranges, phone number through automated voice. I only have 2 template types, so I really only want to send email and text message. But because they're so far off from each other and I don't want to create different workflows, it's fine to create this kind of range. What'll happen is when you save the criteria, you're going to name it. And I always suggest naming it with something that'll remind you what that message or that workflow is going to be doing. So I'll just do SMS and email reminders. And again, you do not want spaces with these names. If anything, just combine all the words together or put those underscores in as well, but don't have any spaces because it can cause issues with locating that file. Once you hit select, you'll hit OK, it's saved. You will see it display down here, but you can also come in here and load it again. So you can see all of the ones you've created here. Now, what'll happen is even though I have via code ranges, phone number through automated voice call, but only email and text message filled in, it's only going to send emails and text messages out. The system will know that these are blank, so it's not going to try to send anything out for fax or automated calls. Now, if I were to leave this window and go back in, it's going to again revert to the defaulted information as if you were setting up, another criteria. But if I want to review, let's say a workflow's criteria, because I need to adjust it, right? So I'll go into load, I will double click on it. It'll populate that information. And if I decide actually I need to include residential, once you make that change, the name will disappear. You will have to hit save, and then you will have to select that file name again. And then it's going to ask if you want to overwrite the settings. Once you hit yes, it'll overwrite those settings. And when you open it again, it should show your changes. And I always recommend if you guys are making any changes to the system, once you've saved it, please close the window, reopen it to make sure it's saved. Just in case there was no disconnect or you thought you saved and it didn't, we just want to make sure that the update took place properly. All right, so that's going over our generate workflow, generate messages window in general. Now, again, on each tab, the criteria will be different. So you'll see some of the information does change. However, same process applies. If you are going to do, let's say, past due notifications, you would use your accounting tab. You need to make sure that you fill in all the criteria you want. Then you'll save it. You're going to see the other templates here, but we need to make sure we know this is a past due reminder. And then we save, so it updates the field down here. And when I actually set up a workflow for past due reminders, it knows to pull from the customer's accounting information. Now, the marketing tool can be used for email blasts. This one I'll go over briefly, but basically you'll fill in your criteria. Let's say you want to send a blast to your customers that, there's a price increase. Over to the right, you have contact information. This says you can choose which tab to pull the information from to notify them. So the delivery tab again goes off the customer's route tab, accounting will be off info, marketing will be off the credit tab, or you can choose all. That just means I'm looking at everybody in the system and I want to see, all the emails on file or all the phone numbers on file to make sure everyone gets this message. Lastly, force via code. If they don't have a via code assigned, because some accounts may not, but again, it's a blast email, you want it to go out to everybody. You can choose force via code, and this will disregard any kind of via code assigned to the account. You need to make sure that the from via code, though, is the email message you are sending. So if you're doing marketing email blasts or phone call blasts, text messages, you can't combine those. Just do one at a time. And the from should be your message type. So if this is an email, just make sure it's set to 2, because using force via code means I'm not looking to see if they have a via code. I'm going to pretend as if they already have this via code assigned, and everyone's going to get the message. And yes, if there is duplicated messages on the different tabs, each tab will have that message sent out, so the customer could get duplicated messages if it's the same email. Okay. And then equipment too. This ties in, it can tie into your propane information, for your propane company, but you'll just review all the information again that you want to set up for that workflow. So next, I'm going to go over the automated workflow process and how that works. So first things first, I'm going to refresh this window. When you are ready to set up your automated notifications, which will go out automatically, you won't have to worry about them once you schedule them. You need to select the desired tab. Then you need to go and load that message criteria. Once you load it, you're going to click on the moon with the stars. You need to input a description. So whatever makes you understand what this criteria is pulling. So if it's a certain account range or customer type range, that might be good to put in the description. You can have spaces in here, but I'm just going to say this is SMS and email reminders, all customers, plus local. Next thing we're going to do is schedule it. So on our schedule window, the occurrence, you can choose daily, weekly, monthly, or one time. If you are doing this for delivery notifications, we usually want to do daily. You will pick your start date, and then you will choose your start time. So I will say, I'm just going to say 12 o'clock is when I want these notifications to go out. Next is how often you want this to occur. Because I have deliveries every single day, I'm just going to put the notification as every X days, and I'll put 1. That means every day this workflow is going to run and see if there's any customers that match the criteria and then send them a notification. If it's just every weekday, it's just going to look Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it's going to say, okay, does anyone match the criteria on the workflow? If so, we will send out a notification. Next, we're going to go over the route date. This is pretty important. So on here, you'll have the dynamic criteria. I always suggest just use it for today. What this means is it's just going to look at the current server day and go off of that. If not, there's first day of the current month, last day of the current month, week, year. It's very rare that people will use this, but there are situations where you may need that. I don't want to go into too much detail, so if you guys do have questions on that, feel free to reach out to support. But for this example, I'm going to use today as the dynamic criteria. Next is our offset days. So this means how many days in advance do I want to notify the customer? If it is 2 days before their delivery, I'm telling them you're going to get a delivery. I will put 2 here. Once I hit OK, it's going to display the example route date. So if this were to run today, we are on the 29th. It's going to look at whoever's scheduled on the 31st that matches the criteria we filled in here, and then it will notify them. Next, you have a choice on completion, do nothing, or email. This just goes to whoever set up the workflow and input the reply email address. Do you want to be notified that it completed, as in processed and ran, or do you not want to receive that email? If it ever errors or fails, it will notify you regardless. And again, it goes to this reply email address, so you will need to fill one in. But once I have this criteria filled in, I'm going to hit save. It'll say my workflow is saved. And now I can come into the moon with the calendar, and I will see all of my current workflows in here. And in this window, you can drag these columns over to see an explanation of what this says. You can also see when it's going to run again and the time. If it already ran, you'll see when it last run. And then if it was failed or successful. And then another important part is the schedule. This tells you how often this workflow is running and when it's running. Now, what's very important is that if you guys have multiple workflows, you do not want them to be running at the same time. They will collide, they will cause each other to stall, and they may not send things out. So I always suggest putting at least 30-minute increments in between each workflow, especially if you have a larger amount of customers. That way they don't collide with each other. So if I needed to send another one for, let's say, past due reminders, I just want to make sure that it's going to go out every day at 12:30 or 11:30 so it doesn't collide with this one. Now, if you ever need to make modifications to these, you can just double click on them. It'll open up everything that you had scheduled. You can come into the scheduler. You can change the time if you'd like, Or let's say there is a, weather issue, you're shut down for a while, you don't want to send notifications. You can come in here, select none, and it's going to turn it off. And you can hit save, and then you'll see it's not going to run again. And then you can just come back in, set it back to the occurrence it was, and it'll auto-populate what you originally had. And then you can turn it back on once you're ready. You can also change how many days in advance you want to notify them or the reply email address. Now, another thing I want to go over that occurs often is some customers may not pull into these notifications. You may feel that they should have received it, but they don't for some reason. At that point, you will need to look through your workflows. You will need to decide which workflow should have notified the customer. And you'll want to take a look at the name here, because again, this is the criteria. This is the name of the file that has our criteria for this workflow. So if I say, customer 100 didn't get the message, they should have. This is the workflow that was, should have prompted them for the notification. I'm going to go look up that load criteria. And I'm going to take a look at all of these different fields, and I'm going to compare that to the customer. So I want to make sure the customer falls in place with all of these criteria. If the customer does not, let's say, for example, oh, I changed it. Nope. Okay, so let's say the customer actually has a credit class of A and mine's only going to 6. At that point, you need to decide if the customer's credit class needs to change, or if we need to change this workflow to include credit class A, or if you just want to create a whole new workflow for credit class A through L. So either way, again, that's all dependent on your guys' company, but you do have the choices in here. Okay, so we are getting a bit short of time, but that is everything on setting up a workflow, scheduling it to automatically notify the customers and the different tabs. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. We can always assist. But I do want to get into our last slide, which is going to go over our status monitor and the status monitor report. So in RMA, you can access the status monitor under modules, customer message center, status monitor. In versions, I want to say 8.1, R9 and newer, the status monitor will look a bit different to you guys. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the report. This is not what I wanted. So message status monitor. So in this window, it's going to look a little bit different than older versions, but on the newer version, you guys can search for account numbers. You can search for email addresses. You can choose the date range of when that message was sent out. It'll also tell you the available CMC points that you have in the system right now. And then it's going to display any kind of notifications here. Now I didn't have that example go through because it actually looks like my advanced comms is off, but whenever you do send out messages, even if it errors or let's say it was delivered to the customer, it should display here. However, if your advanced comms is shut off, nothing's actually going to generate, so it's not going to go through. Just be wary of that. But also when you're first time coming into this message center for each user, there's actually a little option for a tour. So you can choose to go through the tour, and the tour will actually explain each little portion to you. Or you can choose to skip the tour as well. But down at the bottom, it'll show you for each line item what the color coding is representing. You can actually click on those messages and it will display what went out to the customer. The only thing it won't display is any attachments. But if it's the simple, text message saying your delivery is tomorrow, it'll show you it says your delivery is tomorrow. You can filter out the different, columns for whatever types of messages you're looking for. Normally, if you are just wanting to look for error messages that errored, you can go under status. There would be an error option here that you can select, and it'll display that for you. You can also see at the bottom, it'll do a brief preview of all the emails that we're sending out, what was in pending, voice calls, faxes, everything that you generated. And you can go back, you can look at older history if you'd like. It should all still display within the monitor. And then you can choose a refresh button at the top if you want to refresh it. Oh, here we go, there's one. So in here, This is just restoring the tour if you want to view it. So if you missed it, you want to do it, you can click here. But you can choose to skip the tour or you just keep hitting next. It'll explain everything for you. But here's a good display of what a message looks like that had gone out. It'll have the account number, the type of message it was this delivered? Another nice feature is you can actually tell with emails if the message was actually opened. So if the customer says they never received it, you can check in here. It'll tell us if they opened it. Okay. And again, there's other information. I don't want to go over too much, but you can also see points and other items with this window. Now, lastly is going to be the actual report. So you'll go to modules, customer message center, status report. And in this window, you can fill in your criteria. And this is pretty much going to display what's on your customer message status monitor. So if you just want to look for different types of message classes, this pulls into the generate messages window. So if I want to see all my delivery notifications that went out, I can. Accounting messages, marketing messages. If I manually sent stuff to customers through their contact page or through invoice lookup, you can choose these different windows. Again, this has been updated in the latest 8.2 versions. So if you would like to have access to this, let us know so we can update you. But there's a lot of different information in here. And then you would just generate a PDF or you can download a CSV if you'd like to actually review that report. Now, I don't have a lot of old history, so I can't really show you an example, but feel free for you guys to go in and play around with this tool. It'll also give you access to log into the customer portal from here. So you can actually click on this and it'll take you to the customer portal. Awesome. So I know we went over a lot today, you guys, but that is pretty much everything for our Power Hour with CMC for the mashup. If there's any questions you guys had that I didn't go over today, by all means, feel free to throw them into the Q&A right now. If something does come up later, I mean, feel free again to reach out to our support team. We can always assist with any questions or issues you do have. But thank you so much for your time.